They say you should expect the unexpected when you move out to the country. I anticipated the usual rural surprises, maybe a pack of coyotes prowling at dawn, or a fence post knocked loose by winter storms. What I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams. A perfectly manicured woman in $1,000 designer boots, frantically digging holes across my ranch like she was the star of her own delusional episode of National Treasure, convinced she was about to unearth her family's long-lost fortune. Asterisk, asterisk. Let's back up a moment and set the scene. After 15 grueling years in the concrete jungle of city life, I finally achieved my dream, purchasing a pristine slice of heaven in the form of 20 untamed acres of ranch land. We're talking ancient oak trees that have been reaching skyward since before my father was born, rolling hills that stretch to the horizon, and the kind of soul-deep peace that city folk pay therapists good money to find. For 6 blissful months, I've been living my best life, methodically restoring the century-old barn to its former glory, exchanging friendly ways with neighbors I could barely see from my porch, and embracing the kind of simple, authentic existence that seemed to exist only in country songs, peaceful, pure, and blessedly free from any homeowners association drama. At least, that's what I thought I was getting into. I was making my way up the winding gravel driveway, one crisp morning, fresh coffee warming my hand, windows rolled down to let in the sweet country air, when I spotted something that made me do a double take, dirt flying through the air like a geyser. This wasn't the work of some enterprising squirrel or a malfunctioning sprinkler system. No, what I witnessed was a woman, perfectly coiffed blonde bob bouncing in the morning light, designer floral blouse somehow still pristine, standing knee-deep in an unauthorized excavation site in my front yard, attacking the earth with the kind of desperate energy usually reserved for someone trying to tunnel their way to the lost city of Atlantis. I brought my truck to a screeching halt, gravel crunching beneath the tires. She didn't even glance up at the noise, just continued her manic digging with laser-focused intensity. Her eyes were fixed on the ground beneath my prized oak tree, as if she'd memorized some ancient treasure map and was certain X marked this exact spot. I leaped out of my truck, coffee forgotten on the dashboard. "What the hell are you doing on my property?" She raised her head slowly, fixing me with a smile that sent chills down my spine, the kind of knowing smirk that suggested she was privy to some grand cosmic joke at my expense. Then she delivered the words that would turn my peaceful morning into an absurdist theater production. "This is my land. I'm here to reclaim my birthright." This wasn't some elaborate practical joke or performance art. The woman was dead serious. Standing there with her shovel clutched like a scepter, designer boots now caked with several $100s worth of my topsoil, she launched into an explanation that sounded like it had been ripped straight from a Disney villain's origin story. Her great-grandfather, she claimed, had buried an invaluable family treasure somewhere on this property back in the 1890s. She introduced herself as a Preston, and she was absolutely convinced that every square inch of land I had legally purchased was actually her family's ancestral domain. When I mentioned that I'd bought the property from the Henderson family, she actually hissed at me, literally hissed like an angry cat, and declared that the Hendersons were nothing but land thieves. In her version of history, they had stolen the soil right out from under her grandfather's feet, and she was merely exercising her divine right to reclaim what rightfully belonged to her family. I attempted to reason with her, producing my property deed and legal documentation for my truck. She dismissed them with a contemptuous wave of her shovel, pronouncing them fake papers, while launching into an increasingly passionate tirade about colonial theft and buried rubies. I wish I was making this up, but I assure you, I'm not. Then, because we had apparently left the realm of logic and reason far behind us, she pulled out her phone and called 911. "Help! I'm being threatened by a man with a weapon." She shrieked in her phone, fabricating danger out of thin air. The only thing in my hands was my now-cold cup of morning coffee. She threw herself into the role of damsel in distress with such conviction that I half expected an Emmy nomination. Her performance for the 911 dispatcher included claims that I had viciously ambushed her while she was peacefully visiting her ancestral family property. Within minutes, 3 police cruisers came roaring up my driveway, lights flashing and sirens wailing. And if you can believe it, this woman's next move was even more audacious. She attempted to press criminal charges against me right there on the spot. Thank heaven for modern technology, specifically my recently installed security cameras covering the driveway. One particularly astute officer took the initiative to review the footage. The video evidence was irrefutable. It showed her unauthorized entry onto my property, her enthusiastic excavation efforts, her banshee-like screaming match with me, and most importantly, my completely non-threatening stance throughout the entire ordeal, armed with nothing more dangerous than a cup of coffee. Want to know how this bizarre story ends? She left my property in handcuffs. The charges? Trespassing, willful destruction of private property, and filing a false police report, a legal triple threat. As for the aftermath, that majestic oak tree remains unscathed and still standing proud. My ranch has mostly returned to its peaceful state. And our treasure-hunting Karen? She's now legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of my property, thanks to a court order. But I couldn't resist leaving one final touch to commemorate the whole absurd incident. A handcrafted wooden sign, lovingly carved and placed right next to that oak tree, bearing these words: "No treasure, no entry, no Karens,